President Cyril Ramaphosa says government is working to improve access to sexual offences courts in the country and expand the network of Thuthuzela Care Centres. This is to boost efforts aimed at ending gender-based violence in the country. The President making those remarks while delivering his State of the Nation address last night. For reaction to that part of his speech, let's bring in our guest. Omogolo Taunyane-Mnguni is the founder of GVV Monitor SA and joins us now via our video link this morning. Omogolo, always great speaking to you. Thanks for making time for the AM report. You know, yesterday, the President started off in a very poetic kind of way by speaking about what defines us as a country. And at that time, he was trying to drive home this idea that typically we are a nation that seems to survive even the most adverse of conditions, alluding to our ability to make it through even this moment. But as he was speaking, I couldn't help but also be reminded of the fact that we also a country that's described as having levels of gender-based violence that are comparable to nations that are at war. I wonder, on the other side of that speech, whether you felt any kind of inspiration to continue with the fight.
Good morning, and thank you for having me, and good morning to your viewers as well. You know, this idea that South Africans are resilient people, that we can overcome, that we still have, you know, one more thing left in us, is really quite abusive, because there is not much left of the country when you're speaking about, you know, the GBV, high prevalence of GBV in the country. You know, we really need to get to a point where we disabuse ourselves of this illusion that, you know, the President takes the SONA as a platform to be held accountable, to make important pronouncements, and also to really set the agenda and set the vision for us to follow and act on. So it really has been nothing more than a PR exercise for the President, because this is not the time for poetic speeches. This is not the time to really be looking at, you know, conjuring up some kind of resilience and goodness out of people. There is nothing left. We need action, and we need it urgently.
Yeah. When he spoke about social compacts, that's when the issue around gender-based violence came up. And you'll speak to me about whether or not you felt that the President even spent enough time on this particular issue. But part of what he mentioned is that the Solidarity Fund has enabled government to essentially mobilize civil society and activists like yourself in order to realize common goals. Do you feel the same way?
I'm a bit ambivalent about, you know, the President and the ANC government's seriousness pertaining eradicating GBV. The only positives that I can speak to, which the President also mentioned, was the 3 GBV-related legislation that was enacted last year in January. He didn't speak about the GBVF fund, the response fund, which is also doing some important work, but that is also another positive. And also hosting the GBV summit that was on hiatus for a couple of years. So those are the positives that we can really speak to. But when we really try to zoom in on the crucial matters, and those are the Thuthuzela Care Centres that need to be expanded, that expansion is not happening quickly enough. We have way less Thuthuzela Care Centres that should be addressing and being responsive to what community needs in times of crisis. We are still, many years later, waiting for the GBV bill to be put forward in order for the GBV Council to be established and to start functioning. We are still waiting for that. We don't know. We haven't heard from Minister Maitengwana Mashabani. We haven't heard from the President on how far that legislation is. And we still haven't heard from the President on the DNA backlog. That's a very important factor. We know that DNA backlog is in the hundreds of thousands. And we're not going to pass it on to Minister Cele, but this is something that he mentioned in the previous SONA. And we expected some kind of continuity and accountability and transparency to show that we have a government that's very serious about really recognizing and protecting the rights and dignity of vulnerable people. We don't have that.
Yeah, and you know, when you speak about the DNA backlogs, many people will tell you that this is a story we've reported on for years. I've had harrowing encounters with people who literally couldn't even bury their loved ones because they were waiting for DNA results to come out, confirming important details before they could take the next steps.
Correct. I mean, if you don't have DNA, you don't have a case, you don't have closure, you don't have information, crucial information that can enable you to go through the criminal justice system and really realize justice for yourself and your loved ones. So the issue of the DNA backlog is a big one. We didn't hear anything from the president on the triple Ps that the government has gone into with some universities to really try to increase that capacity on DNA backlogs and getting that crucial evidence through the system.
Yeah.
And it really is, a miscarriage of justice in many ways, that we have so many victims and survivors who are waiting many months, many years to get these results back in terms of the DNA.
He did speak about the National Strategic Plan yesterday. In fact, he pointed this out as one of the successes of government, saying that a key aspect of its realization, so to speak, is around its ability to empower women. Is that something you've been able to track? And if so, how has the government fared?
The NSP, I would say, has been realized, but with a lot of limitations. The president spoke about the Women's Economic Assembly as, one of the key outcomes that has really been realized. But at the same time, he also spoke about procurement that would now be geared towards really ensuring that women have more access to government procurement services. That was 3 years ago when he initially made that pronouncement. It still has not been realized. So what I've really arrived at in terms of, the president's pronouncements is that they're simply made, but there's never really an intention and a demonstration that says when we speak, it is followed with action. We have not seen that. The NSP also speaks about the GBV Council. It speaks about the GBV Bill. These are issues that were brought to the public 4 years ago, and we are still waiting. So the NSP has performed well in certain aspects, but if I were to give a general overview, I would say it has failed because of all the limitations and the lack of action that we have yet to see from the government.
Clear and succinct. Omogolo, Taunyane-Mnguni, thanks for speaking to us, helping us think through some of these important issues, given the, dare I say, the avalanche of information from the president yesterday. We appreciate your take the morning after. Omogolo Taunyane-Mnguni is the founder of GBV Monitor South Africa.